Well, that's another Leadville in the books, and it was one for the record books. Keegan Swenson blasted home in 5:43.31 and set a new course record, a record that stood for 8 years, in fact. But like they say, records are meant to be broken. We're going to get into some of that and some other cool stories from the 2023 edition in this episode. And one thing we hope you noticed at the Expo and throughout the weekend was the presence of our title sponsor, Shimano.
Yeah, Shimano is the official component partner of the Leadville Trail 100. They were working the Expo, helping racers get their bikes ready, and they were around on race day too, helping to deal with any last-second emergencies.
This is one of the other things that Shimano does without a lot of fanfare. Shimano does race support. Maybe you've seen their blue vehicles during the Tour de France, bailing out riders with flats and other bike failures. That was one of the roles Shimano played at this year's Leadville 100 as well.
Yep, and if you took a close look at either mine or Lisa's bike, you will notice that we were both on Shimano again this year. It's reassuring to know that the makers of my components was close by just in case I needed something. Spoiler alert, I did not. So thanks to Shimano for being there and for being the title sponsor, once again, of this show.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Shimano. It is Season 6, Episode 26 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
I am Fatty, and I am no longer freaked out. I will be telling the story of my 2023 Leadville 100 soon. And I've always got a story to tell. I'll talk your ear off for days. But this episode, we're going to do what we've done a lot over our last 6 seasons, and that is we're going to share some of the stories of others who have raced this race. Most notably, some 2023 finisher stories. How he was busy at the finish line, talking to people, sticking his microphone in their faces, and asking how their days went. And I picked up a few nuggets on course as well. So we have a great race recap prepared for you.
And let's start with the finish, Fatty. When I got there, after feeding you at Twin Lakes Alternate, the place was abuzz with Keegan's record finish of 5:43.31, the fastest since Alban Licata's 5:58.35 in 2015. The reaction to Keegan's time was one of awe, wonder, and a feeling that Keegan is racing in another universe. The time was so fast that his race was hard to identify with by his direct competitors and the 1,700 other entrants watching one man take over the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. Still, there were podium spots up for grabs, and a few hardy souls were willing to give it a go and try to go pedal stroke for pedal stroke with this one-man wrecking crew. And one of those racers was a guest on our show this season. In Episode 2, we featured professional skimo racer, right? You heard it right. John Gaston, who in 2022 surprised many by finishing second to Keegan. This year he is back for more, this time with more eyes on him too. John takes us inside the front group and describes what it was like trying to keep up with what turned out to be a record pace.
That was the hardest race of my life, hands down. Last year was extremely difficult, to be sure, but it was actually more controlled. This race went out so fast, and we all knew it would because Keegan really wanted that course record. But, as I said, everyone whose name wasn't Keegan was going at their threshold or above up Sugarloaf on that dirt. Just nuts. And every time we would hit a little kicker, these young guns can punch like 400, 450 watts, like non-stop in a 6-hour race at elevation. It just seemed suicidal to me, honestly. My legs felt horrific. Last year, my legs seemed pretty good until sort of the upper half of Columbine. And this year, I mean, even before we got to the dam, I was feeling them. I was like, this is going to be a very long day if we keep this up. So I was really nervous as to how this was going to play out, but you just have to, you play mind games with yourself, and you just have to believe that everyone else is hurting at least as much as you, and that eventually people are going to start dropping off. And that is how it played out. But it was by no means a sure thing, and it was quite a bit more. I mean, last year was nice because it was such a surprise that I could only win. Like second place was a huge win for me. It wasn't literally a win, but for me it was a win. Whereas to back that up, you can kind of only let people down. So I will say there was a bit more pressure, or at least I felt it on myself, even if everyone else said it didn't exist. And that was pretty nerve-wracking against so many pros, just hitting out at the start so hard. But yeah, honestly, and I didn't get to control. Like last year, I rode within myself and sort of believed in my power meter and my zones a bit better. And I got dropped on Columbine and gapped a little bit and caught back up on the descent. And I got dropped on Powerline and paced myself and caught back up. But this year, I kind of went in with this plan of I wasn't going to stay with Keegan, but I wanted to stay with everyone else and not get dropped ever. Because all of these guys, like if they weren't already ripping descenders, they've been working on it. And there's just no room anymore to sort of get away with freebies like that, like I did last year, and catch back on. So that was pretty insane. I've definitely never summited Columbine with Howard Grotz. And that was miserable. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, I was dying, and I was saying, this is insane. I'm gonna have to drop out when I get back to Twin Lakes. Like, I was genuinely thinking of getting into the car. Maybe not put that on the podcast, actually. I was in so much pain, and even on the way back to Powerline along the pipeline, with just these small climbs, and my legs were so smoked. But it worked. I don't know. I don't know how it worked. Yeah.
So once Keegan left your group, that was on Columbine, I imagine. Again,
that was immediate.
What was left? What was the fallout there afterwards?
Well,
you and some other people.
Yeah, we had quite a big group for how crazy fast the start was. We still actually had a pretty good sized group in the Twin Lakes. It was bigger than last year. I mean, maybe 15 people. I'm not sure what the exact numbers were, but that pretty quickly. The nice thing with Columbine, though, is that it is this long approach road. It's wide, and it separates very quickly. There's no punching. Like you got an hour to climb. And so Alexi tried to go with Keegan at first, which was, I think someone actually laughed in the group. And it's no disrespect to Alexi, but Keegan was just on. I mean, it goes without saying at this point, honestly. He's an order of magnitude faster than all the rest of us, as evidenced by his very literally unbelievable course record. But anyway, so Alexi pulled away, but then right behind that was Howard, myself, Cole Patton, Alexi, Braden Lang.
Uh-huh.
This kid, this guy in a white jersey, staring at his name all freaking day, and now I can't remember it, of course. But it was a solid. I think there were 6 of us total. Or there were 6 when Alexi came back. It was 6. And so the 6 of us there actually stayed in really close contact. We summited, Howie and Cole set a ferocious pace, actually closed the gap to Alexi, passed him. We all got by him at the top of Columbine, but he actually caught us on the descent, which was foreboding because last year that was his weakness, and he admitted it. I mean, he's a very good descender, but he was a little not quite as sharp. He had been working on that, and he was absolutely flying on the descents today, which immediately put a nail in my plan from last year, which was to drop him on the Sugarloaf descent, because that wasn't going to happen. And so, there was and then Braden and this other kid, they were dropped, they were gapped a little bit at the top, but they caught back on the descent. So 6 of us rolled back through Twin Lakes, back through Pipeline to Powerline, all doing smooth turns together. Everyone pulling their fair share, which is pretty great when you get a group of guys who are so motivated like that, and know they have a gap on the group behind, so everyone's best interest to keep working together. So it's always kind of fun. But at the same time, you get within the last 5 minutes of Powerline, everyone starts soft pedaling and sort of mentally prepping themselves because it's going to be a world of hurt in a second, and sure enough, it was. And Howie led the entire thing. I mean, I sort of led the bottom for a second, and where it kicked up super steep after that little S-curve, he immediately got in front, and the entire way it was Howie, myself, Cole, Alexi, and the 4 of us got a gap on the other 2 immediately, and I was I was able to basically stay on his wheel. I can't surge like he can on the steep stuff, so he would get 10 or 20 feet, and I would close it down when it got a little flatter. I'm probably 30 or 40 pounds heavier than him, but I was really happy to be at the top with those guys because, again, I knew the last year's tactic of making up time on the descents was just not going to play this year because that whole group was raging on descents. I still tried to attack over the top of Powerline. I took the lead from Howie and sent it into that just scree field of a descent. We actually ended up gapping Cole. So basically Howie and I were on full suspensions, Epic Evos, both of us, and the other guys were on hardtails, and both of us knew that was a good opportunity for us to, if not drop them, at least maybe make them risk punctures. And it's such, even with the full suspensions, it's such a Russian roulette come down there at speed. We actually gapped Cole a little bit, enough to keep it for the rest of the race, at least for Alexi and I. We gapped Alexi a tiny bit, but when we hit that Hagerman dirt, he went into full TT mode and caught us within, before we hit the pavement. So then Alexi, Howie, and myself rolled that pavement down to Turquoise Lake and then up towards Carter Summit together, working pretty well, but obviously that's pretty deep in the race and everyone starts feeling it. And it's funny, you don't really get a sense of how, I thought I was by far the weakest person there, and then you're just trying to do your turn and keep that gap on Cole behind us and just stay in it for one more minute at a time, and then all of a sudden Howie was gone. I was like, what? So, and which is just such a mind. I mean, it's crazy. Your mind plays so many tricks on you. But then Alexi and I kind of looked at each other and were like, okay, let's do this. And so he and I did some big turns together on just the upper section of pavement, and then kept on the gas as hard as we could on that dirt across Keevans, and really solidified that for good. By the time we exited Keevans, we kind of both knew we had that podium locked up, and we were stoked. We fist bumped and said second or third, we don't care. We're on a flying time, and I joked that we would do a feed team time trial together, and he said, yeah, let's friends till the pavement was his thing.
So when you say Howie disappeared, mean he went backwards, not forwards?
Yeah. We dropped him on the upper pavement section before Carter Summit there, and I think he said he was just basically. I think he said he realized he desperately needed a bunch of sugar immediately, and unfortunately I learned out after the fact because at the time we couldn't see Cole behind us either, so we thought he was gone for good. Howie ended up puncturing actually on the Keevans descent. Just a slow leak, and Cole passed him right at the bottom while he was on the side of the trail plugging it. It's just such a gamble with these bikes, man. You're running these skinny tires, and everyone now, I love this race. But everyone who calls it a gravel race does not ride at the front of that field. That is a full-on mountain bike race, and if you look at the results sheets, those quote gravel guys, they don't make that front group. You have to be on the gas on those descents in a big way.
So how did you and Alexi sort it out?
Well, so I knew I had to try. Again, I've never sprinted a bike in my life, and I knew, forget sprinting against Alexi, who's been on the World Tour. I couldn't sprint against anyone in the Grand Prix. I would lose, and I know that, and that's fine. It is what it is. But I did have a slight edge on the descents, and so I did rip Keevans as fast as I could, especially that last, kind of the rocky, steeper section of that there. And I did get a bit of a gap. But not much, a couple hundred yards at best. And again, Alexi, he went and raced TT Nationals this year. When he gets in his aero position, he is fast. And so I kind of sat up at the bottom there being like, you know what, I just threw my last grenade. I did what I could. We didn't die because it was pretty sketchy for a few moments there. And then we just agreed to team time trial it and worked just super smoothly. Because I think we didn't really, genuinely, we didn't care which one got second or third. I think we all want to get second, but there's not really a difference once you're on that podium. And as he put it, a podium at Leadville in any position is just massive. And I think also the fact that we rode, despite playing some cat and mouse when we actually finally hit the pavement there, we still rode a 6:08, which is one of the fastest times ever out here. It looks absolutely miserable compared to what Keegan did. But if you take him out of the equation, that is an extremely quick time. So I think we could all be really proud of how we raced that today, and the fact that we were able to hang in there despite the just wild start. Everyone I've talked to said they've never, ever done a Leadville even close to that hard at the beginning. So it makes it, at least I feel validated or vindicated in how sore my legs are.
Well, congrats again on another podium here. And quickly, how was Skimo this year?
Skimo was good. Fitness was really good, and I won a lot of races domestically, which was great. Unfortunately, I did get knocked out by a couple rounds of some serious illness. It's just sort of the luck of the draw. I've got 3 kids. I live in a resort town, and unfortunately, February was sort of like the biggest month in Skimo, and I ended up spending 14 days fully laid up on the couch across 2 different. I got a RSV for my kids, and then I got a bacterial lung infection. So it didn't end. I did end up kind of rallying, and I won a few more national titles in March. So I'm not disappointed by any means, but my Europe trip was scuttled with that for sure. So, it's one of those things. It's part of why I like racing bikes in the summer, because the winter can have its ups and downs, but if you have this on the calendar, you always got something to look forward to, train for, and again, the racing here is just at another level. I know it gets more competitive every year, but I mean, the difference from last year to this year even was very noticeable. So it's fun to be a part of that, even if halfway through I was trying to climb into a car.
Well, John, congrats again. I think you're a real inspiration to everyone who chooses another sport primarily. Well, he is, but come on now.
My God. We thought it was a joke when they first told Alexi and I, we were just panting, which 30 seconds crossing the line, and literally I thought they were joking when they read his timeout. I mean, it's monumental. I mean, as Alexi, I don't know if that time will ever be broken. I think world class, it's not just world class. I think for high altitude mountain races, I don't think there is, even in Europe, an athlete who can compete at that level.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you like to make him a Skimo racer?
No. Dear God. No, it'd be great. I think Skimo is sort of, is in a spot where it needs more fast racers is the problem. And it is kind of like an obscure sport, so it doesn't pay as well as bike racing. But it would be awesome. I think he does some Nordic skiing, but I don't believe he does any Skimo. But if he ever wants to come out, I'd be happy to show him the ropes. If only he could give me some training plans for next year for this.
All right, John, thanks again for being on the show, and appreciate your breakdown of your race today.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Love the podcast, and it's always fun listening to you guys, whether it's interviewing other racers or fans, or it's cool. The diverse kind of episode arc is fun to follow along with.
All right, and moving on to our overall men, the fastest guys on the day in 3rd place in a time of 6 hours, 8 minutes, 5 seconds from just over the pass in Aspen, Colorado. Give us a big round of applause for John Gaston.
Thanks and congrats again to John Gaston, 3rd place and on the podium for the 2nd year in a row.
I love his story. It comes from a different sport, the sport Skimo, that takes a ton of energy and a lot of travel, and can then turn the page in the spring and put his focus on this great race and go head-to-head with the best in the business.
All right, 2 other guests who quickly became podcast listener favorites were Jackson and CJ Wiggins. The brothers were 2 of the youngest to complete last year's Leadville 100, and this year they were back for more, both hoping to beat their previous fast times. Okay, we're back with Jackson and CJ Wiggins. We had you guys on early, I think, in the season, kind of touting you as some of the youngest entrants to the Leadville Trail 100, and probably still so, but we won't get into age and beauty. Let's get into times, first of all. Who's going first? Oldest or youngest first?
I'll go oldest.
Okay.
I'll go first.
Okay, so CJ, you laid down what?
I laid down a 7:53 this year. My goal was to go under 8, and I thought I was behind all day, but caught a second win going up Carter, and was able to make it back before 8, and I'm super stoked on it.
And Jackson, time was?
My time was 8:01:02. I was really trying to stick with CJ the whole time, but Columbine, he just had a little bit more legs and got some time on me.
Yeah, and you were probably hoping to break 8. I mean, that's obviously within your reach at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I hit Carter at 7:15, and I knew I just had to go from there. And just coming over the boulevard, I knew
I was just a little bit too far.
Okay. And CJ, this was your goal, right? And you got there.
Yeah, that's correct. I last year I pulled the 8:04:59, and this year I didn't want to stretch way too far, but I just wanted to ease it right under that 8 hour mark, and I was happy when I rolled up the boulevard and saw I was still about 7:45 and could roll it in nice and easy.
What was the difference maker there?
I think the difference maker was just from the beginning knowing where I was and knowing where I could push a little bit harder than I did last year. So just knowing the course and pushing a little bit harder on the beginning and then rolling a little bit faster in the flats really helped. We were going out pretty hard, felt a little bit rough going up Columbine, so we tapered it back quite a bit. And me and Jackson were 15 seconds apart at the top of Columbine maybe, and just didn't see each other. Unfortunately, got in separate groups rolling back home, but it was a great day nonetheless.
Yeah, Jackson, I saw you and CJ go Twin Lakes alternate outbound toward the mountains. So I was like, great, they're together. But obviously that mountain can be a decider. Was that the case there?
Yeah, once we hit the goat trail, I really just didn't have as good as legs as CJ. So he just got a little bit of gap, and then I had to recover on the downhill, and that's really where he got a ton of time on me, and he got in a good group at the bottom.
Sure. But this was a better day for you, correct? Overall. I mean, I know you probably, look, every breaking 8 is monumental here, but this was a better day for you.
Yeah, definitely. Last year I got 8:13, and 8:01's nothing to be mad about. Like, to make up 12 minutes on this course is very hard, and we'll definitely be back next year for a better time.
What do you think, what was the difference maker for you this year?
I think the difference maker for me this year was really going out with Silver. We had a little bit faster rollout, and we pushed it a little bit harder in the flats. So last year we were a little bit scared in the flats because we didn't know where we were. And then this year we kind of knew where we were, so we could push it a little bit harder.
Tactically, was it the same as last year? Were there any feed changes or anything like that, nutrition-wise? Anything you did different there?
Basically the same. I'd say I took in more carbs per hour this year. That just comes with like knowing my body a lot more. Throughout the year, I've really been working on like what suits me best, whether it's gels, mix, hydration mix, and I really nailed the combo, I think, today. My stomach felt good basically all day, and I felt like I had energy the whole day. So tactically, it really was the same. I thought it was really fun just like making a point to stay with Jackson because today I felt like the groups were a little bit smaller, and at times it was really nice to know that we had each other to roll with and draft off of when the group did dwindle down a little bit and we knew we just wanted to go our pace.
And what was the brotherly agreement at the start line? Was it stay together? Was it ride our own race? What was it?
It was stay together as long as we could. We ride together every single day, and like it's so cool to know that like I'm faster than him some days, he's faster than me some days, and like I honestly couldn't picture one of us dropping each other today. But I mean, we got a few seconds apart, and then that's that. But we agreed that if we were close enough on the boulevard and we weren't in a rush to get under 8, that we'd come through together. That would have been awesome, but nonetheless, it was amazing riding the first part of that race with him and just sharing some moments, both good and bad, and then we both had a great day in the end.
Was it Jackson that was a little overhydrated last year?
Yeah.
And you fixed that this year?
We were a little bit better this year, but definitely with the colder weather, we weren't sweating out as much. So my feeding wasn't as good because I was kind of relying on those bottles, and I couldn't take in as much. So I really struggled with nutrition today. So I really didn't have a good stomach until after Sugarloaf descent, and then it was kind of too late from there.
And I know I'm just catching you as you rolled off the finish line, but are you already thinking about next year, and what do you think it's going to take to break that 8-hour mark?
Next year, we definitely want to go under 8, and I think to do that is a little bit more strength training. We spent a lot of time on the bike, and I think we just need to build a little bit more muscle because we have the skills and the nutrition like down. It's just we need to gain more muscle by the end of the day.
Any equipment choices you want to drop on the audience? Anything? Any revelations? Any wow moments? Like, oh, that worked.
I mean, I did have a new bike this year. Last year I was riding a Specialized Epic, and this year I'm on an Allied BC40. I did actually like the 120 on there. Last year, I just felt super fatigued coming down Sugarloaf, and I felt like I lost a lot of time there. I had a lockout front and rear, so I was able to lock that out, and it was super stiff. I went with some Recon Race 2.4 or 2.35 tires. Those were awesome. The tacky dirt today really hooked up well. But overall, yeah, I was able to dial in my bike and felt super good all day.
How about your equipment? Any equipment revelations from this race?
Equipment, I didn't really change much. I basically did the exact same thing, but nutrition, I changed to the Scratch High Carb from the feed. And I really like that. That suited my stomach a little bit better than other nutrition.
Well, guys, CJ Jackson, thanks for being on the show now twice this year and showing us how to get another great result. We hope to see you back next year and sub 8 for the younger brother, and keep up with the good stuff for CJ.
Thanks again for having us. Thank you.
All right, good to hear from CJ Jackson Wiggins. CJ's time put him at 11th in the 20 to 29 category, and Jackson finished 4th in the under 20 division. And one note from the Wiggins family, there was actually a third brother in the race. We almost forgot about him. I think I interviewed CJ and Jackson a little too quick because Devin Wiggins came across in 9 hours and 25 seconds, Fatty, barely missing that big buckle. So we expect again to see the Wiggins trio in the next year hunting down faster times.
Oh, so close. 25 seconds. I mean, that is, wearing a different helmet. That is getting a little bit lower for a minute. It is, but you know what? He might have done all of those things and still it just wasn't there. But boy, it leaves you wanting more. I know that story so well. By the way, these youngsters are going to have to make way for Mason Dumonsky, who did the race on his 18th birthday. Furthermore, with Mason's finish time of 8 hours and 25 minutes, he finished approximately 5 minutes after his birthday moment. So he finished at 18 years and 5 minutes old. I think that's going to be a tough record for youngest racer to ever beat.
Yeah, man, it's a young person's game now, isn't it? The Leadville Trail 100. Boy, congratulations to Mason. Well done. We hope you had time to cruise the expo and speak with the vendors there, in particular our friends at Envy. Envy brought with them their mountain and gravel carbon components to the Leadville Trail 100 Expo.
That would mean the M Series and G Series wheels, plus the Foundation Series from both categories. Also, the exciting new MOG gravel bike was on hand. Derek from Envy was on hand to explain all their products. And if you caught up with either Hottie or me and you saw our bikes, you will notice plenty of Envy logos. Envy really knows what it takes to compete or just complete the Leadville 100. And that is why it is important to have them have a presence at this race.
Get your bike ready for the next Leadville Trail 100 by decking it out with the finest carbon components. You can find all that you need at Envy. That's ENVE.com. Okay, back to the finish line where we wanted to finish up a story that was started in episode 24 of the season.
Yeah, that was our LFAC Bonanza. It was a bunch of listener questions. In fact, so many that we enlisted some professional help. On the show was our friend and 20-time finisher, Nate Whitman. Nate had a lot of great answers and advice for our listeners. And this time he had a few questions of his own. And that one really was whether he'd be able to race this year at all.
I have tracked down someone here at the finish line I think you really want to hear from. That's because when he last left us, we were a little uncertain as to whether Nate Whitman was going to even make this start line. Well, here he is at the finish line. So that's the good news. Nate, pick up where we last left you, which is, I think, a couple weeks ago as we sit here now on race day, and you were pretty sure but not completely sure that you would race. What happened? What sealed the deal that put you on the start line?
That's right, Hottie. I think we last chatted about 3 to 4 weeks ago, and the challenge I was up against was a torn bicep tendon from lifting my race bike out of the back of my buddy's pickup truck bed. I had surgery to repair the tendon on July 5th, so I'm about 5.5 weeks off of bicep tendon repair. And I really had no idea whether I should even be thinking about trying to do the ride, let alone consider it a race. But I kind of just took it day by day and set some real simple goals. I was doing a lot of rides on the stationary trainer. I kind of marked on my calendar some milestones where I said, if I can't go down the power line, by Monday of the race week, then what am I doing? And, everything just went really well. My arm felt really strong. The surgery went great. My surgeon is himself a pretty strong cyclist and has done a number of finishes here at Leadville at very fast times. And really what sealed it was a couple things. When I started to get out on course and try to ride the trails for real, it felt pretty good. I felt much, much more confident than I had anticipated. And then I had a check-in with my surgeon on Monday, basically, 5-6 days out from today. And he very reluctantly essentially gave me the green light. He said I was healing great. At one point, he pressed down on my tendon. I didn't even know what he was doing. And then as I left, he said, "Hey, remember I pressed down on your tendon? You didn't wince. You didn't scream in pain." He goes, "Yeah, that's it. Your tendon feels great. I wouldn't know that I'd given you surgery 5 weeks ago." He said, "My liability insurance should probably tell me to tell you to be on the couch, not racing Leadville. But if I was in your shoes, I'd probably be doing the same damn thing." So his kind of vote of confidence and a handful of rides out on course, and I said, let's give it a go.
So you have raced, quote unquote, this thing many, many times. Probably most of the time you line it up here, you are a racer. When you got here this morning, were you a racer or were you looking just to ride?
So as recently as like 6, 7, 8 days ago, I would have said I will be happy just to take the start and get a buckle and have some fun. But I did some pretty big rides on course all throughout this week. My training was so low that there was nothing to taper from. You can't taper if you haven't been training hard. Taper is for someone who's been training really hard for a long time. But if you haven't been training hard and long, then it's almost like the opposite. Just keep getting rides in, and every ride will increase your fitness a little bit. So I went out for some big rides this week, and I felt really comfortable. And when I looked at my times, both up and down, I said, I'm not that far off. So I sort of set a stretch goal for myself. Maybe I could flirt with 8 hours. And if I missed, then, get a sub 9, get a big buckle, and off we go. And the result, I'm floored. I'm ecstatic. You probably hear it in my voice. I did a 7:28, and 2 weeks ago I wasn't even sure I would ride. So
that's not your best time, but is it amongst your best? Where does it rank of the 21 finishes?
So it's kind of middle of the pack. My top finishes are high 6 hours, 6:50, 6:55. I've done in the past several years, I've been kind of hitting the 7:10, 7:05, 7:15s. So I guess by my normal standards that I've done the last several years or last decade, really, it's a tad slower, but I would say I'm as happy as I've ever been. I couldn't believe it. And it's funny, I did everything different. I didn't train the same. I rode a different bike. I rode a full suspension, dropper post, wide tires. I had this big robotic articulating brace on my arm. I basically approached the whole thing, very differently than I have previously. And I'm really happy with the results. And I'm going to go and do a big brain dump and write down everything I did, what I ate, what I stressed about, what I didn't stress about. I really, mostly mentally, I just decided not to stress. I said, this is all for fun. I'm just going to go out there, get as rested as I can, and try to have a great time. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I saw you early in the week at check-in and this morning at the start line. You were wearing this brace that articulated at the elbow, and it basically kept you from fully extending your arm, right? So what did it, obviously we get an idea what it kept you from doing, which is re-injuring that tendon, but how did it limit you on the bike as you went through the technical sections?
I had practiced with it a lot, In fact, it's funny. I actually procured the brace ahead of the surgery. There was about a week to 10 days between when I injured myself and when I had surgery. And during that time, I actually was able to ride. So I thought to myself, if I'm going to have to ride with one of these braces, why don't I get my hands on it now and start sort of seeing how it feels, what it does, what the movement is. I don't think it limited me too much. Yeah, it's got a hinge at the elbow, and it's got cuffs up at the bicep and down the forearm and the wrist, and it kind of keeps you in a locked range of motion. So I had about 30 degrees of flex from, basically a comfortable bar position and a little bit in and a little bit out. But what you're trying to prevent with that injury is like full extension of your arm to 180 degrees straight. The thing that the doctor didn't want me to be doing is pulling up on the bars really aggressively. And as you know, like the top of Columbine, Powerline, you are using your arms to leverage the back of the bike down and pull. And I just really tried to focus on my strong hand, and even went so far as to kind of grip with my weak hand a little bit softer, like maybe hold on only with 2 fingers or kind of hold on to the top of the brake hood. So I made some adjustments, but it felt great out there, and it gave me a lot of confidence. And every once in a while I would just think to myself, God, am I feeling okay? Am I sensing anything? And no, it felt good. So
Yeah, I saw you go by twice at Twin Lakes Alternate, and you definitely stood out. Like, you could tell it was I can always speak you out, but I definitely could today with that, let's call it a contraption on your arm. And you thought about covering it, didn't you, to maybe clean up the arrow there?
I did. I made a few MacGyverizations to it. The first thing I did was after some test runs with it, I found that it actually was sliding around and kind of slipping down onto my wrist and the ball of my hand. And I procured essentially like a wrist brace that I strapped the bottom cuff of the arm brace, and I kind of mated the two so that it couldn't slip. So that the wrist brace wrapped around my hand, around my thumb, like almost like a half glove, and that kept the whole brace in like really strong, sturdy position. So that was one. The other thing I thought about, and I joked after listening to kind of the Be Aero podcast, earlier this summer, I thought about whether I should try to like sort of create a sleeve for it, whether that's just some giant oversized arm warmer, or maybe like cutting the sleeve off of some type of stretchy jacket. And in the end, I didn't do it. One part was just ran out of time to test and laziness. And the other part was it does have adjustable straps. And I found that during the race, I could, on the more tame sections and the flat sections, I could loosen up the straps to get more blood flow. And then I would tighten it and cinch it really strong for the downhills, and I was worried that if I like kind of covered it, I wouldn't have access to those straps. So anyway, little bit of kind of, homebrew to figure that all out, but I'm glad I made it across the finish line unscathed and had a really nice day.
Yeah, it was good to see you come up the red carpet. So, you've probably learned a lot over the years racing this thing. You've been lucky not to be injured. So what in particular have you learned about serious injury this year, and what would you tell other people who are really up against it? They have a big goal, they want to race a thing, whether it be Leadville or anything, they're up against it with injury. You maybe took some risk here.
A little bit.
But what did you learn, and what would you tell other people?
Yeah, I guess I would say I took a little bit of risk, and at the end of the day, you could say, it's a bike race. You're not earning your income from it. I'm getting older. I'm 47. What's worth it? For me, there was just a real need this year to prep and kind of be a part of this scene and be up here in the mountains and feel, the adrenaline of being out on course and getting fit. And I decided it was worth it. But I would say for folks who are up against it, the one thing, and I said this to many, many of my friends and doctor and relatives and family members, you'll have a lot of people, you have no shortage of people telling you not to try, too risky, cool your jets, pump the brakes. And what I would say is, yep, I am. I am not going to take any silly risks. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I've got hundreds of people that want to tell me to back it down, and I'm going to be the one voice to give myself permission to sort of keep an open mind. Right. And that's what I did. And I keep a kind of an old school paper calendar with the weeks blotted out, and I sketch things in pencil. And all I did was sort of sketch out little mini milestones. And that's how I think of Leadville. I mean, I've given advice on Leadville itself. How do you conquer such a big event? You got to break it into chunks. If you just start thinking about 105 miles and it's going to be 8 or 10 or 12 hours, you kind of might like let the magnitude of it all overwhelm you. But if you sort of say to yourself, well, look, I got to go from the start line to the pipeline aid station. I'll have crew there. If I need something, somebody will help me. If you kind of break it into chunks. So in the build up to the race and managing the injury, that's what I try to do. And I set little goals. I said, okay, on this day, let's try for a 2.5 hour stationary trainer ride. And thank God for the Tour de France. I watched a lot of the tour on my phone and iPad with headphones. And he said, okay, that felt good. That felt good. I'm getting fit. Let's go, in 1 week, let's do a workout where we go 2 hours on the stationary trainer. And if I'm feeling up for it, let's transition right away to the actual bike. And we'll ride the bike, but we'll ride on a very controlled, paved surface, no cars, no curves, no rocks, and sort of see how I feel. I did that. I felt confident. And I just sort of set little mini stepping stones towards race day.
Right. Well, it was great to see you come up with the finish line. We're glad you made it. We're glad the streak is still alive. Yeah. We also want to thank you, too, for being on the show and, helping others, right? You're essentially a contributor now. So thanks for that as well, Nate Whitman.
So thanks so much. I'm honored. I would love to come back on the podcast. Anytime you guys invite me, I'm there for you. And love the race, love the Leadville community. It's as good as it has ever been, coming out here now for 21 finishes. And, wherever I can kind of give back to other athletes, wherever they are in their progression, I'm happy to do it. So thanks for inviting me.
All right. Thanks again to Nate Whitman. Hopefully you've seen our pic of Nate in his brace. It is amazing he was able to do what he did and keep his bike on trail. I saw him flying through Twin Lakes Alternate Fatty. It looked a little awkward, that big hinge around his elbow and that left elbow kind of sticking out. But he looked focused, as he always does. He looked fast, as his time proves. Listen to this. He was only 2 minutes slower compared to last year.
There you go. His marginal loss sticking his elbow out into the wind.
That's right.
Okay, let's get to something that is a little bit of a tradition with this post-race show, and that is to highlight the days of some of the folks who have helped us and helped you. Guests of the show, people who've helped us research or set up, or just racers we know and love to follow.
And we start with some fast guys who've been on the show in previous seasons, like Alexi Vermillion. He came in with a 6:08, you probably heard, second overall. He spent the day chasing Keegan and battling out with John Gaston. So congrats, Alexi. Payson McKelvin, also been on the show. In fact, he was our original LFAC guy, Fatty.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple seasons ago. We actually had him in 2 shows answering your questions. 10th place for Payson with a 6-hour, 18-minute finish time. And Todd Wells. Todd has been on the show a couple times, including last year's recap show where he sat on the grass with me and told them about trying to get home and having Alex Howes fall in front of him after getting snagged in like a piece of barbed wire or something like that. Well, Todd was in there again yesterday, mixing it up. Yeah, even though he's kind of retired, came in 13th place though, and his time was 6 hours 23 minutes.
That is not a retired pace.
No, sir, not at all.
He's a true icon of this race, man. I'm so happy to see him still just ripping up the trail.
Finally, he was on the show 3 times this season, so we cannot miss the fact that Dylan Johnson had another great day on a drop bar hardtail, mind you. I hope you saw some pictures of that. Dylan's a real experimenter. He likes to try things. He races his own race, races his own pace as well, as he talked about on this show, uses aerodynamics, kind of experiments and finds new ways to, deal with altitude. Dylan came in at 16th place with a time of 6 hours, 26 minutes. Congrats, Dylan.
Very fast guy. It was awesome. I finally got to meet him at our group ride, gave him a big hug. He did not want that. I do not think he knew who I was in person, but he's been on our show this many times. It's basically like he's family. Another person who is basically like family at this point is, of course, Brandon Dyksterhouse, 68th place overall. Holy cow. 7 hours, 19 minutes. He is, of course, with one of our big sponsors, and especially of the podcast group ride that was the day, 2 days before the race, which was a huge success. And I'll talk about that in another episode, but appreciate both his support and am amazed at how fast that guy is.
Yeah, Brandon is a terrific guy. We're extremely thankful to have his support to the show. He helps a lot of things happen here. We also want to thank Goo also for showing up at that event, Fatty. They were great to be there because they normally have their own ride, and they said, "Oh, let's partner with those two podcast characters, and we'll roll out with them and hand out a bunch of Goo products." So, again, thanks to Goo for being there. Really great. Just because your Leadville is over, by the way, doesn't mean you cannot get on that feed bandwagon, and you probably should. That is, our discount code is still good. All you do is go to thefeed.com/Leadville, sign up, register your email, verify your phone number, and claim your $80 credit. Then spend your first feed credit of $20 right away. All right, time to highlight some fast women. You know by now that Sofia Villafañe, and that's how you pronounce her name, Sofia Gomez Villafañe, and I've had to practice this a lot to finally get it right.
I've never said her name right.
Yep, that's how it's done. I've heard enough. I've heard her on other interviews, on other podcasts, and it sounds like that's what everyone's arrived at, and she tends to agree. Anyhow, she won the Pro Women's Division with a time of 7:09. Now, we have not had Sophia on, but we'd sure like to.
Oh, yeah.
Really good story, and really speaks her mind. We like that. We have had on Sarah Sturm. She finished in 7 hours, 30 minutes. She had a cleaner ride compared to last year. Last year we talked to her. She'd hit a cow. Had some troubles going up Columbine. It was kind of a wild day for Sarah.
This year, no livestock encounters.
No, I know she did not have the day she was hoping to, but there was none of those, collisions coming off Keevans with the moo types. So nonetheless, it was a 7th place in her division for Sarah, and still trying to keep that smiling going. It was a pretty tough day on Sarah otherwise. So give Sarah your support if you can. She does that thing, that ride and those efforts and that organizing she calls. It's supposed to be fun, and she tries to live that too. So, all right, Sarah, we'll see you next year at the Leadville 100. Kate McLaughlin. Now, Kate, we know through our friend at Lifetime, the guy that really helps us out. He's our chief contact with Lifetime. Maybe you saw him at the Shakeout ride, and that is Ryan Cross. Well, his partner is Kate McLaughlin, and Kate finished, had a good year last year. This year was phenomenal. She improved on a time of 8:05 from 2022 to 7:42, which was good enough, Fatty.
Wow.
To be the 10th woman that is on the day.
That is incredible. I mean, that is a massive improvement. Would love to have her on the show and have her tell her story of that was then, this is now, here's what the delta was between those two things. That's incredible. Rosa Grant, another real icon of the sport, as well as a former guest of this show. I don't even know how many times she's been on, Hottie. 3, 4 times? She's retired now, but her coach did race this year. Jason Tullis of Tenet Coaching was on last year, and this year he had a great finish, 9 hours, 15 minutes. Also, another friend of the show and the guy who had his cop car lights on and blazing as he led our little group ride down the road, Sheriff Heath Speckman, 8:48. And depending on when you listen to this episode, he may be losing sleep, or I don't know, maybe he sleeps soundly, but he is prepping to do the final event of the Lead Challenge this Saturday, August 19th. I tell you what, Hottie, I am going to be watching the live splits for that because Heath is just a great guy. Love having him as a friend of the show.
Yep. And cool that he came out and helped us get out of town for the group ride too. We love having Heath around. Good guy. And he even followed up with us later and just asked, hey, everything go okay with the ride? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's that kind of guy. So Thank you, Sheriff Speckman. Hey, I caught Todd Murray at the finish line. He has raced
Speaking of legends.
I know. He has raced every Leadville Trail 100. We had him on the show talking about some of his experiences over the year. This year, He did it in 8 hours, 13 minutes. Just amazing. He finished first in the 60 to 69 division. He just turned 60. He told me that he targeted the category. Like he said, I want to go out and win as a 60-year-old, and that's exactly what he did, and shows no signs that is of slowing down. Certainly probably going to come back for whatever number it is and hopefully dominate that 60-year-old category, because another great guy and a legend, really, of the Leadville Trail 100. There is a second 100% finisher, somebody who's done every Leadville Trail 100. He is John Callahan, and he finished this year in 10 hours, 19 minutes. You know, Fatty, we shared space out at Twin Lakes Alternate with actually 4 other support teams, one of which was just one person. And that one person was Annie Bennett. Now, she was there crewing for her husband, Dave Bennett. And I'll have to say, Fatty, I tout myself as being pretty good at this crewing thing, but I got nothing but praise, that is, on how Team Bennett did, especially the first time Dave entered the pit.
Yeah, Dave! Dave! Woo! Okay.
Okay, we got you. We got you.
Yeah.
And no water bottles, right?
Are you Hottie?
Yeah.
Love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. I love that you're riding.
Yeah, and I'm 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
Beautiful. Yeah, Annie had it all ready, including some rub. I think it may have been PR lotion. She rubbed down Dave's legs, helped him get his chain wiped down, got him fresh bottles, and got him on his way.
Good enough. Thank you. You guys are so awesome. I sure love you.
Later that day, I caught Dave at the finish with a big buckle, an 8:43 time, and a huge smile. And you know what? Annie was quite happy too.
Oh, fantastic when you have your partner also be your crew, and it sounds like she is ready to teach you a thing or two, Hottie. That is awesome. Also at our tent in Twin Lakes was Team DNA. In fact, the tent was provided by DNA Cycling, as Nikki was supporting her husband and DNA CEO Joe Sepulveda, as well as his buddy and my buddy and riding friend John James, also in a DNA kit just like us. He was being crewed by his wife Gina. Both Joe and John, they rode together, had a fun day. Lisa and I had opportunities to hang with them, could not hang with them because they are fast guys. They came in having a lot of fun and with a very good time of 9 hours, 46 minutes.
Hey, and we'd like to again thank DNA for their sponsorship this year and all the years, in fact, and also for helping us out with that Thursday ride. You know, they brought socks, handlebar bags, musette bags to our group ride, which turned out to be quite helpful for listeners taking home all the free stuff we tried to give out, like bottles and nutrition products. Hopefully you got a good look at DNA, the DNA kits, that is. You know, I was really taken by that long sleeve jersey that Joe was wearing at the Ice Palace Park.
Mm-hmm.
I love that thing. In fact, that may have freaked Joe out a little. I'm sorry for that, Joe, because, you know, I started putting my hands all over the fabric of this wonderful looking jersey. It was a really nice top. Really kind of taken by, and I love the long sleeve jersey. So I love that. Instead of the arm warmers, just putting those things on and running with those, especially out on training rides. So really nice looking piece that Joe had. And he looked great on race day. Hey, by the way, if you want to get started on a custom kit, that's exactly what DNA can help you with. You can look as good as Joe or John or Fatty or me or anybody in one of those kits. So get started on that, please, and support one of our supporters. They are at dnacycling.com.
All right, so let's talk about the women of this race a little bit more. Here's one that I've met, Lisa Nelson, 10 hours, 12 minutes, 8th in her division. Might have been slowed down by her racing partner, but she and I had a fantastic time. She and I had committed to race together this time. It was my 25th Leadville 100, and we were riding together. I'll have a little bit more of that story a little bit in the next episode. Also, Roxanne Hall, another friend of the show, another person who's been on the show. 11:04, I saw her on Keegan's as she was just beginning the race that would ultimately bring her 21st buckle. She is still the only woman to have 20-plus finishes, though Lisa now has 18, so you can see where that is going. I got to say, Hottie, While Roxanne and Ty Hall now have a combined 42 buckles, there is one married couple that has more, and that is Lisa and me. We have a combined 43 finishes, and that is a pretty close competition when there is one buckle between us. Sarah Bloom, another friend of the show, another former guest on the show, and her now fiance, Mark Wolfgang. They were in season 4, or episode 4 from this season, I should say. Mark was the rider who discovered during last year's race that he had early onset of rhabdomyolysis. He pulled the plug wisely. He went back a week later, finished his ride. This year, he had trouble again. He had a knee injury, but Sarah did the race, and despite having 4 flats, finished in 9 hours 39 minutes. She and I chatted a little bit after the race, and she says that her main regret is that she did not run Cushcore. She is I have seen her in action. She is a very aggressive, smash and bash descender, talented, but definitely puts her rims through the paces.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cushcore next time, Sarah. I think you know what to do now, and you'll get that big buckle. Speaking of flats, Tandem Team Hoops, who I spoke with at the finish, said they had to pull over 5 times to deal with a rear flat. And in the end, that probably cost them the mixed tandem title as they finished in 8:42.59. They were chasing Team Sandoval, led by Season 4 guest Marvin Sandoval, one of the great locals who race in Leadville. He was racing tandem with his wife. Team Sandoval had a time of 8 hours, 40 minutes. So they won by just about 3 minutes in that mixed tandem division. Yes, Marvin, by the way, is again in the Lead Challenge. And as a Lead Challenge athlete, he is allowed to ride tandem as part of his overall time. Hey, Ron Henyon brought his favorite lady to Leadville and married her. I'm not kidding. Ron and Cassie said their vows after arriving in Leadville. There are wedding shots next to one of the lakes in Leadville. And then a few days later, Ron lined it up for the 3rd time and finished in 11 hours, 15 minutes. We hope Ron gave Cassie a ring and that buckle.
Yeah, definitely should give her that buckle. Absolutely. Another big friend of the show, Dave Thompson. He's been friends with me since the fatcyclist.com days, finished in 11:24. He's going riding in the Dolomites with me next month. So that's going to be fun. Chris Smith, I guess he calls himself this, so I can call him too, a essentially blind rider who uses suspension to great effect. Friend of the show, former guest on the show. He got a 11:36. I'd be very interested to hear his story. Saw him before the race. He looked like he was about 20 pounds lighter than previous years. And of course, Jeff Leanhouse, one of the folks who has done almost every racing of the Leadville 100, and it is very much, I guess I would say, a soul rider. He rides for fun, just rides a lot, and always eats a big ol' hero sandwich during the middle of the race. Man, I admire his style, his approach to doing this race. Just a very fun guy.
Saw Jeff in town before the race, and he confirmed he would be picking up his sandwich slightly before race day and eating it on the dam. All right, Jeff. Now, Fatty, this show has become pretty popular for something that talks about one particular race. And we draw listeners from, a wide section of the United States and Canada. But I was truly surprised and honored at the finish line when a man who identified himself as Jorge Jimenez came up and identified himself, told me he got across the finish in 8 hours and 29 minutes, and told me he was from Zamora, Mexico, and said, in fact, that he was not the only one in Zamora listening to our show and paying attention to it and drawing cues from it. He brought a whole slew of riders with him. There must have been 5, 6, 7 of them. I saw them all leaving after the day was done for them, but it was Jorge who came up and spoke with me and wanted to thank you and me, Fatty, for all that we've done for them. And the fact people down there are listening in Mexico, which is great. I mean, I knew that the show was doing okay, pretty good, and there were a lot of folks that got a lot out of it. I just never knew we had downloads going to Zamora, Mexico, which is
We'll have to check our analytics better. I had no idea.
Right.
That's great.
But really, seriously, congrats to Jorge and everyone on his team for a great day. Again, this was like Jorge's, I think, at least second time that he'd been to Leadville Fatty. And he said, look, he was a 10-hour rider before, and the show really did make a difference for him to get the big buckle. So congrats to Jorge. And then finally here, Fatty, someone I only met on race morning waiting anxiously at the front of the White Corral. What's your name?
Steve Haddock.
Steve, what happened last year?
Last year, I didn't listen to all your podcasts and just wasn't prepared. So this year, came in strong, did better training, listened to every one of the podcasts from beginning to end.
How far did you make it last year?
Got cut off at Pipeline at 75.
Ugh, that hurts.
It did.
So you're going to make it back this year, right?
This is redemption all the way.
All right, man. Good luck, huh?
Thank you.
Well, happy to report that Steve did make it all the way back in time with an 11:34. However, it was not a carefree ride for Steve. He had cramps coming down Powerline. He couldn't shift into his easiest gear going up Columbine. And at Twin Lakes Alternate, he collided with someone trying to take a photo while not looking in the correct direction. So congrats, Steve, for getting through all that and getting back to the finish. And thanks for listening to the hundreds of hours of Fatty and I making beautiful audio together.
Yeah. Thanks tons for listening, Steve. These are my favorite kind of stories. They are the people who do not let failure get the best of them. People who take a very difficult, a very difficult race and make it not impossible anymore, make it possible. They retool and they try again and they find success. I also love the moments at the very tail end of the race, and we want to highlight a couple of those. The last buckler, Cameron Chansey, at 11 hours, 59 minutes, 14 seconds. Silver buckle with 45 seconds to spare. So, you could have, had a snack, taken a picture on the boulevard. No. Also want to mention Johan Zuniga and ask, what would you do if you were in control of the buckles? Johan came across at 12 hours and 31 seconds. I don't know, Hottie, what would you do? Buckle or not?
I would ask, I would actually maybe slip Johan a buckle and say, look, could you come back and do it in, 11:59 flat for me next year? And then, then you got the 30 seconds to spare. So it's a tough call, right? I mean, a lot of people expect that cutoff time to be enforced by the letter, by the exact second. So it's a really rough, tough call. Anything could happen out there, right? I mean, 31 seconds, right? That could just come anywhere. You could, I don't know, you could drink us a little bit better. You put out a quarter of a watt for an hour and he's probably got it.
I think most people coming across at that moment don't have a lot more to give. They all look like they are pretty well drained. I actually have two short stories I want to tell regarding that. Back in the old days when we had the post-race meeting in the gym on 6th Street, Ken would get up and both for the last or the first person to finish after 9 hours and for the first person to finish after 12 hours, he would have basically a vote by acclamation. Should we give them the big buckle? Should we give them the buckle at all? And of course, we all always said, yes, absolutely, we should. And there'd be a lot of cheering. And so I think, just following in the Ken tradition, there's your answer. Yes, we should give the 12 hours and 31 seconds guy a buckle. But there is someone who I think actually was perhaps the most amazing racer of all that I met this year. I actually met him during our group ride. His first name was Bill. My brain was too foggy to remember his last name, but he knows who he is because he told me the story that a few years ago, he weighed 470 pounds. Think about that for a second. He has lost 300 of that pounds. He is now 170 pounds. He looked fantastic. And he was racing for the first time the Leadville 100. and I got to see Bill at the finish line. After I finished my race, Lisa and I were smoked. We went and took a shower, came back, sat down in lawn chairs, right at the, right below the crest of that final climb. And I saw Bill. I don't remember his exact time. All I remember is that this guy who used to weigh 470 pounds did every single foot of the Leadville 100. I think that is amazing.
The last official finisher was Johnny Haygood, 12 hours, 59 minutes, 22 seconds. So no buckle, but he does get a finisher's medal. He's recognized by the race officially as a finisher. There were 1,787 starters, at least according to Athlinks. 1,530 finishers that would be under 13 hours, plus 5 who got in but not quite under 13. And speaking of back of the race, we always want to check the results of Ty Hall. He rides for the Leadville Trail 100 Legacy Foundation in a project called Dream Chaser. He purposely starts at the back and tries to pass as many riders all the way back to the red carpet. This year, in a time of 8 hours, 24 minutes, Ty passed 1,546 riders on his way to raise $72,000 for the foundation. Ty passed more riders than those that finished than the official finishers of the race. I mean, that's how he just blazed it, and did that with wave starts, which makes it even tougher. So congrats to Ty and the Legacy Foundation.
I got a question on that. What do you suppose Ty says to Roxanne as he passes her?
See you at dinner, honey.
Hi. Grab on if you can. Oh, man. Those two are both, a lot of talk of legends in this episode. Man, there's so many good people doing this race. Love thinking about all of their stories. I'm going to tell a little bit of my own in the next episode. Meantime, we're going to wrap this episode. And I have, my own little injury story this year to talk about. I've said enough already. There's no mystery. It has a very happy ending, but I'm going to give you more details next time.
All right. In between now and then, if you want to keep talking about the Leadville Trail 100 2023 edition, check out our Slack channel. It is leadville.fm/Slack. And if you like the show, go to wherever you listen, give us a 5-star rating, write a review. See all the ways you can find this independent show. It is leadville.fm.
Everyone, thanks so much for listening this season. We are not quite done, so keep your stories coming. Start thinking about next year when we hope to see you at the starting line.
Remember one word. One word will give you the power at Leadville. 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 Say that to you. We'll see you at the finish, family. Love you.